We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane Page. I am your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JonnyPage9. Jonny, how does it feel to be an old man today?
Yeah, the back hurts. It's tough. I actually am ill as well. So if I start choking, it's not just because I got to 30 and my body stopped. So if people watching just see me frantically coughing on mute, that's all fun and games. Hopefully the voice holds out for the podcast. But yeah, it feels good. I was thinking that introduction will not be relevant Sunday because I will be a lot closer to Lincoln Financial Field. Don't know how much closer, but Cincinnati is definitely closer to Lincoln Financial Field than London is. And Monday I'll be at Pittsburgh because I'm going to see Pittsburgh New York Giants on the Monday night as well. So I'll be even closer to Lincoln Financial Field then as well. So not as far away as the usual introduction, but I will only be there for 1 week. So by the time I speak to you next, the introduction will be relevant once again.
Yeah, it's still it's like over almost 600 miles from Cincinnati to Philadelphia, but it's significantly closer than England to Philadelphia. So
Indeed.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and dive into it. Before we do, though, just want to plug our Patreon for those of you out there watching. Go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/ontheshanepage. There's a lot of cool perks that you can get. We have a $3 and $5 a month tier that you can go support us there. You get my All-22 film breakdowns. My Jalen Hurts pass game review is already live in the Patreon as we record this episode. You get an ad-free version of this podcast, some creative control over the podcast. And I think the coolest thing is the Discord where you can just hop in and chat with us. And we try to hang out in there from time to time as well. So be sure you go check that out. You can get a free 1-month trial. See if you think it's worth it. We obviously think you will. You can also subscribe to the whole podcast feed at Eagles Pinpole Network, wherever you get your podcasts. This show goes there. 7 other shows go there that are full-length shows each week, as well as like a weekly morning quick hitter from Phil, just to update you on what's going on in Eagles land. So a lot of great stuff coming your way. More Eagles content than you can probably consume. So go check that out. But as normal, we're going to give you guys 3 points each on each side of the ball. Jonny, I can only assume, based on the performance at the Meadowlands, that you're going to want to start offense and that you're going to spend the next 45 minutes talking about the run game. Is that about right?
Yeah, 45 minutes might be slightly short. I could go longer. But yes, I would like to start with the offense. And if possible, I would like to start with the run game. Before we do, a couple of good comments coming in already from Austin talking about Jalen Hurts. We will get to Jalen Hurts. And Mark, shout out for my beer assessment. Yes, I had a few Americans ask me about Guinness yesterday, my drink of choice, which did make me laugh, replying to you lot. Yeah, if you want the best, you have to go to Dublin. There is no other way. And if you haven't been to Dublin, I've been this year, and I'm sorry, but it is different. So for any Guinness drinkers, listen to the podcast. Very far away. I know it's a long journey, but it's absolutely worth it. If you are interested in drinking habits, occasionally I'll post the occasional beer, but yeah, Dublin is the place to be. That's about the only thing, Shane, that will stop me from talking about run game actually this week is talking about beer. I'm ready to get into it. Yeah, when you are.
All right, well, let's do it. I feel like I got to let you go first and get the run game out of your system. So hit me with your first offensive point.
So we'll try and keep this as relatively short. And as I'm doing this, I'm desperately, frantically getting my film for that, which is always good. So Eagles run game. We spoke about it a lot the past few weeks. I spoke about the situation because the whole idea of having a mobile quarterback is that he's a cheat code for the run game. And that means you want to run as many shotgun plays as you can because it's easier for the QB to keep it. And you hear Kellen Moore openly talk about this. But the other problem is Eagles have got an extremely good offensive line and they've got a very good running back. And a lot of the best NFL teams run from under center and run from the pistol. The Eagles have struggled a little bit with how to, balance the two of them. And one of the problems is if you don't run the ball that much, it's hard to balance the two of them. It's much easier to balance it when you run the crap out of the ball, basically, because you've got way more running plays to try. So this was about as multiple as an Eagles run game as I think I've seen in years. Stoutland's always had a multiple run game, but it's always been a shotgun multiple run game. This was multiple from so many different ways. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single running play because it will take too long. I'm actually pretty proud because my live analysis was pretty good this week. If you listen to the post-game show, and if you didn't, why not? I actually nailed the Eagles' 3 explosive plays, which I was quite happy with without the All-22. But what I really like about them is Eagles had 3 explosive runs in this game. And I think all three drives led to touchdowns as well. So you could argue those 3 explosive runs were incredibly important. And they were all completely different. They were all from different formations, different running concepts, and they all target different areas of a defense. And that makes it really hard for a defense to deal with. So let's start with the first one, Shane, which is clip 3 on my film thread. This is the first Saquon Barkley run where he essentially ran down the left sideline, and I thought he was going to score, but he got pushed out on about the 20 or so. First things first, Shane, just pause it immediately, as you already have done, this is the benefit of running from shotgun. So this is an RPO, and we moan about RPOs a lot, but the Eagles are never going to stop running RPOs in general because you have plays like this. So Hurts can keep this because it's a shotgun, and when you're in shotgun, if people are wondering why can't you do this from under center, it's because Hurts needs to view the defense. He needs to look at the edge. He needs to read possibly an edge or a defensive tackle or a linebacker to see where to go with the football. The Giants want to keep 4 over 3. So before you even run anything, you've essentially taken out 4 players. Then if Jalen Hurts keeps it, you're going to keep another player out. So you essentially take out 5 immediately. Now, the benefit of running, and this is why formation is so important, is they use A.J. Brown condensed, and they basically tell A.J. Brown to ignore the cornerback. Not a lot of teams can do this, but the Eagles can because they have Cam Jurgens, or Jason Kelce, shall we say. And Cam Jurgens moved genuinely like Kelce on this play. Not many teams have a center that can get to the cornerback before the running back does. So the Eagles just completely ignore the cornerback, and they tell A.J. Brown, you're condensed. Your job is to block the down or the safety on your side. And essentially, he's part of the pin. If you want to know what pin pull is, essentially, the linemen to the left of Jurgens are pinning the defense to stop them flowing to the outside while Jurgens pulls. And A.J. Brown is sort of technically part of the pin, I guess. The other really key block is Tyler Steen has to get to the linebacker, and that is a really hard block. Because if you look at where the linebacker is pre-snap, he is lined up to the left of Jurgens, and Tyler Steen is obviously to the right of Jurgens. So this is quite a tricky play. Things could go wrong. The cornerback could blow it up because A.J. Brown is ignoring him before he gets to Jurgens. The linebacker could blow it up because Steen doesn't get there. But neither of those things happen, and the Eagles run it perfectly. So if you run the play, you can see everything I've just said there perfectly. 5 of them are taken out, the edge and the 4 by Hurts. Steen gets to the second level. Jurgens absolutely roasts the cornerback. And it's about as well executed as you can run it. Like, you couldn't ask for it any better. I have the second angle as well behind this, which is cool. Whilst you're playing it, Shane, a comment coming from Mark saying, can you run it from pistol? Yes, that's the other benefit of pistol, is it does a little bit of both. So you can get a read, but the only problem is sometimes from the shotgun, it's a little bit easier to read, and I think it's easier for the QB to keep it because it's obvious that the QB is going to one side. So if you're running like a bubble screen like this, it's easier for the QB to run it from shotgun. So that was play 1. And that play is pinball, stressing a defense with an RPO, bubble screen attached, stressing a cornerback, stressing the linebacker. Then the next explosive play is a completely different play, but it's still similar, I would say. So the next one is play 9 of my thread. And if anyone ever comments that Jalen Hurts isn't mobile anymore, please tell them to go and watch this play, because watch what happens to the Giants linebacker here. So the Giants are playing a 4-2 front, and the Eagles have run this play a lot. If you pause it just now, Shane, the Eagles have run this play a ton. We've seen them run it for years under Steichen, under Sirianni, where the tight end leaks out as if it's split zone, but he doesn't actually block the edge. And in fact, Hurts ends up throwing it to the tight end in the flat. Now, the Giants have seen this, obviously, because anyone who's watched any of the Eagles offense has seen this. So when they see that tight end running across the formation, firstly, the edge defender is stopped because he thinks he's going to give a tight end straight towards him, and the tight end actually avoids him. The second thing is what teams have been doing, Shane, as you know, against the Eagles' read option this year, is they've had the tight end scraping around and taking Hurts. So the Eagles basically play off that, and they almost fake this read option. They fake it like Jalen Hurts could keep it and throw to the tight end. That literally draws the edge and the linebacker completely out of the play. You've got 2 players, Shane, that you don't have to block. If you can run a play where you don't block the edge and the linebacker, you are laughing. And there are some great blocks inside, but to be honest, it's made easy because of the way they're schemed up, because of the concept, because of Jalen Hurts. That is an absolutely huge hole. There is no way the Giants play that if Kenny Pickett's the quarterback like that. So there is just no way the linebacker cares that much. He will play Barkley first, and then he'll get out to the quarterback. But with Jalen Hurts, teams are worried. There's a great view of it from this angle, where if you just pause it like a second or two into the play, like look at 41. He is scraping. He is exchanging. His idea is to get round to Hurts because this is how teams stop Hurts running. And the gap couldn't be any bigger. So they've had two plays where they've taken advantage of Hurts in the run game from shotgun. They've had different people maybe focused. This one's a bit more like hit inside quickly. The second one is a bit more slow developing, take advantage of Juergens. And if that's not enough, the Eagles just decide, well, now we'll just go with some old school lead. Technically, I was going to make lead concept of the week, but in one way, I'm not going to spend too long on it because I've just spent ages on the two other running plays. But the Eagles never run lead. I mean, not many teams run lead at all because fullbacks have been a dying breed the past few years. I could go a lot onto the why fullbacks have basically not been used anymore, but long story short, they've been replaced by more mobile tight ends. They can be quite limited because they don't really give you too much else. I mean, as good as this is, the Eagles are going to have to build on this because if teams just start seeing Ben Van Sumeren in the game and the Eagles run every time, they're going to consistently expect the run and start stacking the box. But the Eagles can also take advantage of that. I did read, as I'm sure many people have, that Ben Van Sumeren was a fullback at times in high school. I believe high school anyway, not college. Or maybe it was college. And he is absolutely, like, you can tell he can play fullback. Like, it's pretty obvious. He's not just a random guy lining up. The benefit of having a fullback in there is you actually have a lead blocker to follow. It also means that the offensive line don't have to worry as much and they can get to the second level a little bit quicker. So Ben Van Sumeren blocks this perfectly. He gets straight to the mic, which is exactly what you want him to do. The hardest guy to block, and he does enough. Ben Van Sumeren's not going to pancake him. He's not going to send him flying, but you just need him to do enough. This is a really, really awesome play to see. And what hopefully will be cool now, Shane, is can the Eagles build on this? Like, I'll put money on Ben Van Sumeren getting a target in the next couple of weeks because you can fake something. You can run him into the flat. Like, you can throw him a check down. It will happen. I think a lot of good NFL teams, look at what Shanahan's done the past few years. Look what the Ravens have done. A lot of the best running teams in the league still use fullbacks. The Eagles have been massively anti it. But this week, they basically ran everything I wanted them to run. We saw under center, we saw pistol, we saw shotgun, we saw the threat of Hurts, we saw getting downhill. There was another play that I won't show because otherwise I really will go for 45 minutes, but they also run QB counter bash. QB counter bash is essentially where the QB runs counter and bash means away and the running back runs away from the concept. Normally, when the Eagles run it, Hurts keeps it. But this week, the edge defenders were so focused on Hurts, they just gave it to Saquon Barkley, and this happened twice. So I think you've essentially got a running game with an elite offensive line, and I think Steen was excellent in this game, like really good, and I think we're getting to the point where he maybe has to be considered a starter soon. This was Dickerson's best game I've seen in a long time. He was moving people like I haven't seen before. Juergens was excellent, and Lane Johnson we don't need to talk about, and even Fred Johnson, he didn't play well in pass protection, looked good in the run game. So, long story short, the Eagles are running pretty much a variety of concepts with an elite running back who we don't even talk about anymore because he's clearly the best in the league. To answer that question very quickly before I finish about who is making under center pistol, it's definitely Kellen Moore. Like, Stoutland's been here a long time with Hurts and they haven't incorporated it at all. When they tried it last year, it was an absolute disaster. And in fact, I think you mentioned the Colts running it very little as well. And that was when Steichen was here. And he's obviously with Indianapolis now. So it is absolutely Kellen Moore. I imagine Kellen Moore is more under center. And I imagine the compromise they're making is more pistol because it allows them to have sort of the best of both worlds. I wrote a BN article. This was like the dream game for me because I will just say one more thing, Shane, before, and I promise I will shut up, is that running the ball is not just about one or two plays. And I've said this for years, Shane. Those of you that have read my stuff for years, I've said for so long, running the ball is an identity. If the Eagles gave up running the ball after the first 3 drives, people would say, it didn't work because they didn't score any points early on. That's not what running the game is. You have to commit to it. You have to do it over and over again. The Giants got sick of it. They must have hated this game. Eventually, the Eagles just wore them down. If you just did this in the first quarter, if the Eagles were 10-0 down and they decided they're going to stop running the ball because they're losing, which they've done in the past, this game would not have happened. We talk a lot about identity. I think if you run the ball, you have to accept that sometimes it's not going to work, but you stick with it and eventually you will break a defense down. And this was the most I've seen the Eagles properly commit to the running game in a long time. It had a lot to do with the team they were playing, not because the Giants were a bad run defense, but because the Giants couldn't score any points. So it allowed the Eagles to stick to it. But I said when we went down to the Buccaneers a few weeks ago, I'd have kept running the ball even when they were 14-0 down, and they didn't. They tried to throw out of it. And this is a good example of why sometimes you've got to keep your nerve, because this running game should wear down a lot of teams because it's very, very good.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning the Giants had a top 10 rushing defense in both EPA per attempt and DVOA. So they're a good rushing defense, and the Eagles were able to do that. Toilet Paper on YouTube says that Ben Van Sumeren was a college fullback and was also a wide receiver / running back in high school. So potential for some targets there as well.
Yeah, right. I'm going to shut up, Shane. So you want to talk about a very quick first point compared to mine, and then we will get into the Jalen Hurts discussion. You guys, so your first point.
You guys hear that, right? You guys heard Jonny take like 14 minutes of airtime and then tell me to be quick. I just want to make sure all our viewers clocked that. But my first point is going to be talking about Fred Johnson.
That's why it's quick. That's why it's quick, guys. I'm speaking about the Eagles run game. He's talking about Fred Johnson. There is no comparison.
Yeah. So I'm just going to show you the things I clipped up of him. Now there's going to be a lot more negative than positive because I generally don't think he played very well in this game. But the first clip, and again, Fred Johnson's our left tackle, number 74. I'm not going to circle him every time on the screen, but on the first play, you get a late shift from the defensive line. And he does a really good job here of helping out Grant Calcaterra, who we all know would not make this block probably one-on-one. And so he does a good job helping him out, but then watch the shot that he puts on the linebacker, like just sends the linebacker flying out of the play. And so Jonny mentioned he was good in the run game, and I generally think he was, but he was quite bad in pass protection in this game. On this next rep, he's just going to lose to Brian Burns off the edge, and he holds and it doesn't get called. Like, that's a massive hold, and it probably would have gotten called if Hurts hadn't just slid down anyways. But and Brian Burns is really good, and he's on an island against Brian Burns, but he continued to lose. On this next one, he also loses to Brian Burns pretty quickly inside. Fortunately, Hurts is hot on this play because of a blitzing slot, so the ball's out anyways, and it doesn't matter, but he got beat again. The next clip I'll show here is in the run game. It was an under center run play, and he just gets knocked backwards by Brian Burns. Brian Burns kind of beat him up in this game, and he has 75 pounds on Brian Burns. Like, he's supposed to have this power as a run blocker, and Brian Burns just knocks him back onto 1 foot. And that's why Saquon cuts this play back. Like, you can see it's great vision by Saquon to see this happening. Like, Saquon's trying to go off the left side, and he cuts all the way back to the right side and makes something out of nothing. But another poor game, another poor play there. Now, this next one is a good run play for him. He's going to pull across the formation with a lot of power and hit the linebacker. And this should be a big gain. Mekhi Becton doesn't do a good job of climbing to the second level, so there's 2 guys in the hole, but that's you can get him on the move in the run game. You can do some things. On the next clip here, he's trying to reach block a defensive tackle, and it goes very poorly. The defensive tackle kind of just bench presses him into Saquon. And so ups and downs, there's some things he can do, some things he can't do. And then this final one I want to show, he's just going to whiff on Brian Burns on a run block. And so I don't know what he's doing there, but he just totally whiffs. Saquon spins and makes him miss anyways, and is able to get some positive yardage. But overall, I mean, there's some positives as a run blocker. There's some negatives as a run blocker in those clips as well. But my real concerns are him pass blocking. Now, he allowed 4 pressures on 23 pass blocking snaps in this game, which was a 17.5% pressure rate. Now, it was against their best pass rusher in Brian Burns, but overall this season, he's had 99 pass blocking snaps, and he's allowed 22 pressures. And we can couch that in, well, it was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who blitzed a lot, and he was facing Brian Burns here. But at the end of the day, he's really struggled in pass protection. I've been really impressed by Tyler Steen. If you were looking at one game that Jordan Mailata was going to be out, I would roll out the offensive line like they did. But knowing Jordan Mailata is out at least 3 more games, I would seriously consider moving Mekhi Becton to left tackle and inserting Tyler Steen as the right guard. So the Eagles won't do that, but that's definitely something that I would take a look at for next week.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he didn't play well. And that run play that he made, the first one you posted, is like absolutely absurd. And it shows that he's got quite a bit of potential. I might keep him there for one more week and see how things goes. But I must admit, it does feel a little bit weird. Tyler Steen is on the bench this week and Fred Johnson's playing. You can argue something's not right there. So I'm not sure. Could you go Tyler Steen at left tackle as well? I mean, he was drafted as a tackle. He's a little short. Becton didn't really play very well at tackle, I guess. The question you ask yourself is who will be worse at tackle, Johnson or Becton this week? It might be worth trying both of them, in all honesty. And
the big thing the Steen played tackle, I believe, at Alabama. And he's not he's 6'6", so he's not small, but he's got tremendously short arms for a tackle, which is why a lot of people had him pegged as a guard coming into the league. Yeah,
that was me included as well. Right, let's move on from Fred Johnson. 20 minutes on run game with Fred Johnson. Classic midweek. Becton's injury, I don't think we know about yet, but I guess we'll find out more in the week. Right, let's get into Jalen Hurts. So my next 2 points are about Hurts. But I'm going to focus on something particular because it's something that I think now the Eagles have got to the point where AJ Brown does something good and we go, oh, yes, AJ Brown. Saquon Barkley does something good and we go, yep, that's what he does. Jalen Hurts throws a wonderful deep ball and we just shrug it off like every quarterback makes this throw. So I want to very quickly talk about 2 plays. I want to talk about only one play from Hurts, to be fair, but I want to talk about the 4th down touchdown. It's play 5 on my film, Fred Shane, but I'm sure you got a clip of it yourself as well. So this is 4th and 3. The Eagles are running mesh, and basically Jalen Hurts obviously has an alert built in. He sees one-on-one safety. He actually reads the safety well because it looks like he might have safety help AJ Brown, but he reads it post-snap, but he doesn't. And then he just launches it. And Steen does a fantastic job here actually dealing with the stunt. But I wanted just to focus on the placement because this is a tough throw. He has to drift to his left. He's getting hit nearly as he throws it. The ball is in a bucket, Shane. Like, it is absolutely perfect. And AJ Brown ends up scoring. Now, this is not a one-off. We see AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts do this quite a lot. I'm going to then be really annoying, Shane, and say, can you go on my timeline? And it would be nice if I told you this before. I tweeted a Brock Purdy play out just before we started recording. And for those wondering, why the hell am I talking about Brock Purdy? I'm not talking negatively about Purdy at all. But I watched the Chiefs 49ers game, as a lot of you did. And I just saw this play. And it made me realize, like, maybe we take for granted how good Jalen Hurts is because none of the announcers talk about this. So this was a play to Jacob Cowing, I think his name is. And it's a stop and go, and he's wide open. Literally 5 yards of separation. Far, far more open than AJ Brown was. And you can see, you don't really see the second angle annoyingly, but Brock Purdy has no pressure on him. There's no pressure. There's no safety. And no announcer says this is a bad throw. Like when you watch the game live, because I was watching the highlights, the first time I saw this was the highlights. I made a mental note to go back and watch the All-22 and find it because I wanted to see it. No one comments like this ball should be out in front. If this ball was out in front, Jacob Cowing scores. Now at this stage in the game, it's 21-12 to the Chiefs. They're 9 points up. And the 49ers are on first and goal. And that's no guarantee, especially against the Chiefs defense. On third goal, Shane, what does Brock Purdy do? He throws an interception. Good. Austin said Tom Brady ripped him live. I'm glad because I only watched the highlights first. I didn't hear anything mention it. So I'm glad that he did. Because Brock Purdy threw an interception 2 plays later, third and goal. So that underthrow, it looks great on the stat sheet. It comes up as a deep play. It's a good read. It's a perfectly fine ball, but it's not a great ball. I think Jalen Hurts is an elite deep ball thrower. When he throws those to AJ Brown is unbelievable, I know, but he's not often that open. And he puts it in the bucket. Like AJ Brown doesn't slow down sometimes. That deep shot is inch perfect. And I think we maybe, when we talk about like, oh, I think some of us take it for granted, like he's just throwing a deep ball to AJ Brown, like anyone could do it and it's easy. It takes a lot of timing. It takes a lot of skill. I think if you asked AJ Brown about it, he wouldn't be so arrogant and he would say, yeah, it's a lot of Jalen as well. It's not just me. I think maybe as fans, we take for granted how good Hurts throws a deep ball. And I think when talking about Hurts and analyzing him, you can't just ignore the fact that he throws a really, really nice deep ball. And I think watching Purdy this week just made me realize, because Purdy's a good quarterback and some people would rank Purdy above Hurts. And I can understand why, considering what Purdy's done in the league. but we take for granted that those deep throws are really, really good. So before we moan a little bit about Hurts, I thought I'd just get that in there and mention that I think as fans, we underrate how good he is as a deep ball thrower.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to talk about some of the inconsistencies with Hurts. And I want to talk about 2 third downs with huge misses and then 2 fourth downs where he makes up for it. And Jonny used the 4th down go ball to A.J. Brown. I want to talk about the 3rd down play before it. And so this is 3rd and 3, and the Eagles are going to run a play called mesh rail. Mesh, we've talked about mesh before. It's these drag routes that you run against man coverage. And the rail portion is the wheel route from the running back out of the backfield. And so generally, and this is the way the Eagles are going to run it, you're going to have a sit route, and this route down here doesn't matter at all. Sometimes it's an alert to a corner or a post or a deep ball, whatever. That doesn't matter for this play. And so you could call this mesh sit wheel, mesh rail, either one works. The way that you read this play out is the wheel route is 1, and then you've got your drag route is 2, and your sit route is 3. And technically speaking, if you're talking to a coach, they're going to tell you this other drag route is 4, and this backside receiver is 5, and that sounds good on a film room, but that's just not reality. So 1, 2, 3, wheel to drag to sit. Okay. Sometimes you can run the same thing. You can run like the mesh route, and it's just a quick route to the flat, and it's still the same thing. You're reading that first. And the reason you read it first is because you need time for the mesh to develop. And this is your fast release. And so if we watch this one, Hurts is going to stay locked on number 1 for too long. And so right here, he's looking at it, but you've got the safety, or maybe it's a line. I think it's a linebacker. He gets over the top. He's over the top of this route. If this was a quick flat route, maybe you could throw this, but it's not. It's the wheel route. And Hurts is looking at it. This is covered, and it's still covered. And you've got a guy 3 yards on top of your running back running vertically now. This is not open. You need to get to number 2. This is the timing for number 2. And number 2 is open. He's open now. He's still open. He's still open. And now he's not open anymore, and we end up throwing it away on 3rd down. That is a terrible miss, because that is the second guy in a progression that was wide open, scrambling or running into your field of vision. It's an easy throw for a 1st down. You can't miss that.
Yeah, Shane, can I come in on this play before you go to the next one as well? If you're not finished, then keep going. But before you move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate, because obviously you're right. And the people are going to comment. And I mean, there's no discussion here. You are absolutely correct. This is a bad miss. It's a bad miss. I think I'm going to defend Hurts a little bit more on the second play than this one. There's 2 things that I think is worth pointing out. Firstly, I think it's worth pointing out that people say Hurts doesn't see the field, and I think that's not true. This is not a seeing the field problem. This is a processing problem. And this is not a processing problem in terms of doesn't know where he's going. This is what we call an elimination problem. So as quarterbacks, you need to eliminate what's not there quickly. Now, if I was to defend Hurts ever so slightly, there are 2 things about this play that I think is worth noting. Number 1, I'm surprised it's not Saquon Barkley, because I think Saquon Barkley is possibly wide open, and Hurts should recognize that it's Gainwell. The second thing is, when you call this play, what is the number 1 coverage you want to get Shane to throw the wheel?
Man.
You want man, and you want cover 1 man. And who do you want covering your running back?
A linebacker. The
linebacker. And you want him getting through the drag or the sit route from the tight end to create traffic. I think the reason why Hurts gets stuck up on this play, and I'm not defending him and saying it's a good play, because it's obviously not. I'm not an idiot. I can see that he should get to the second read. It's very, very obvious to anyone who's watched the All-22. I think the only way I defend him slightly is that and it's funny how Hurts gets criticized for not going through the play properly. This is like a bit too robotic. This is like, it's cover 1 man, therefore I throw to the running back. That was my slightly robotic voice, apparently. But in some ways, it's like, it's actually not like the way people talk about her. It's like, oh, he plays with like vibes, and it's not a vibe play. It's actually the opposite. He's being too stuck in a system. And you are completely right to criticize him, but I think context is important, that he has every right to go to the running back on a wheel route against a linebacker in cover 1 man. In fact, that is the dream. And I can understand, I feel for him a little bit because I think he's hoping and expecting that Gainwell can outrun a linebacker. And I think if it's Barkley, he does outrun a linebacker. I'm convinced that this is Saquon Barkley, this ball gets thrown. Like, I think whether he's open or not, he throws this ball over the top and lets him go and get a chance to get it down the field. So I feel for him a little bit because you know that by the time he does eliminate it, he's like giving Gainwell such a chance because he loves the read. And then by the time he eliminates it, it's just too late to throw the drag. And I bet he was kicking himself. I just think it's a bad miss, and it is a bad miss. I'd rather him miss like this than like another way, and that makes sense. I think this can be cleaned up, and I think I'm less worried about Hurts eliminating stuff on this kind of play. I've seen him run mesh a lot, and I think he's normally fine. I think it's just unfortunate in some ways, and it is a fault. I'm not going out there and defending him. I think the next one I can defend him more, actually, weirdly. But this one, it is an inexcusable play. But at least he's reading it out correctly. I think it's just a sign that has got to be quicker. He has got to be quicker at eliminating what's not there. But I think from a coaching point of view, they would say, yeah, I understand why you stared at the rail or the wheel. You just looked at it too long. He should have realized earlier and come off it.
Yeah, the linebacker was never threatened by the flat release portion of the wheel. He was running vertically the whole time. And then, of course, he comes back on 4th down and drops one in a bucket to A.J. Brown. And I've got that play, and I talked through it on my All-22 video, and I won't show it and talk through it again here because Jonny just did it. But just Hurts made the really easy thing look hard. And then he comes back on 4th down, and he makes the really hard thing look really easy. But then we get later in the game down to the red zone. And if that last play, I would consider that last play Hurts' second worst play of the game. This is the one I consider the worst play of the game. It's the same concept. You're down in the red zone on 3rd and 2, and you're going to run mesh rail again. So you've got, this time it is Saquon Barkley coming out of the backfield, and you've got A.J. Brown coming across. I don't remember which of these tight ends runs the mesh and which one runs the sit, but it's the same concept. And again, what Devontae Smith does, it does not matter on this play. We read this play out from running back is the 1, to our drag route coming into our field of vision is the 2, to our sit route is the 3. This is how it's always read out. It astonished me watching this play that he didn't throw the ball to Saquon. I literally went and watched a coaching clinic on mesh rail to be like, have I had this wrong my whole life? And it's not. Every coach teaches this way. Your first look is your peek at the running back. And it's almost as if Hurts is like, last time I didn't get to the drag quick enough. And so I just have to start here this time because Saquon is wide open. Nobody goes with Saquon. And he should be, your primary read should be Saquon. This ball should come out. There's no reason for it not to. This isn't like a screenshot thing where it's like, oh, the concept was on the other side. And this guy was open, but he wasn't in the progression. Saquon is number 1 in the progression. And it's not that he alerted to Devontae Smith on the backside running something because he doesn't open that. He opens to the play side. He's number 1 in the progression and Hurts doesn't throw it. Like that should be a walk-in touchdown on 3rd and 2. And you miss it and you end up scrambling and throwing the ball away. And once again, like that's his worst play of the game, in my opinion. And I'll let Jonny talk about it for a second, and we'll come back and talk about what I thought was probably one of his most impressive plays of the game on 4th down, because he just like oscillates between like low, high. But talk to me about what you saw in this play, because I think you disagree with me a little bit.
I don't disagree. I'm not here to defend Hurts on these plays, and I'll probably get comments. Hurts defender. I just think it's boring podcasting if we talk about the same thing as well. So I'm going to provide like the counter argument, shall I say? I think the other one's worse than this play. I think you've got to feel for him a little bit because he's made a horrendous mistake on the previous time, and he's probably gone back to the huddle, and Kellen Moore said, you need to eliminate that wheel quickly in the red zone, especially you need to get to that drag. And I know this is really like, I'm going down like screenshot Twitter here, but I think when you look at the way the play is drawn up on paper, if you look at it pre-snap, that cornerback is definitely to the outside. The Eagles have no receiver out on this side. So I think you get a pretty good indication that this is zone. And I think when you hit play, Shane, just like pulls it the second he snaps, I think Hurts looks, and the quarterback makes like a weird movement. If you play it for like half a second again, the quarterback sort of, on the snap, he like goes outside and then he comes in. And I can only assume that, and Hurts obviously gets this wrong, but he must just think that cornerback is like guaranteed to go to the flat, because he's obviously wide open. And the reason why I feel for him a little bit is because I think this play is basically a byproduct of the previous one. That's my theory on this play. I think this play doesn't happen if the first play doesn't happen. I think he's overcorrected his mistake. I think he's, rather than reading it, I think in some ways you could say he's got lazy. I think he's not read it at all. I think what he thinks is going to happen pre-snap is the cornerback is going to go outside, because with zone coverage, it doesn't make any sense for the cornerback to follow the receiver. And that's actually different to the previous play. If you look at the previous play, they're in man coverage, and it's obvious they're in man coverage quite early on. So I think because the Giants defender screws up, like, let's be honest, that Giants quarterback should absolutely have the flat. Psychologist, I wish. But pre-snap, Hurts is actually correct, because that cornerback, there is no excuse for that cornerback to not be in the flat. Like, that's his job. The corner makes a horrible error. And I think Hurts basically doesn't read it post-snap at all. I think his eyes might go there, but I don't think he's actually mentally doing it. I think he's basically pre-snap given up on it immediately. And I almost don't think it matters how wide open it is. I think the quarterback could have run the other side of the field. I don't think Hurts was going there. I think he had literally made up his mind pre-snap because of what happened on the previous play. So I agree with you. The misses are really bad. And I think it's a shame that they both came on mesh, because mesh is a play that he reads really well. He also reads a wheel route very well. He's thrown a few of them. He threw a brilliant one week 1 this year against the Packers to Saquon Barkley. Comments coming in about the mental mistakes, like he sees ghosts. I don't know. I think he does at times. I think on 3rd and long in this game, he did. He didn't trust Fred Johnson. I think that's slightly understandable when Fred Johnson's one-on-one with Brian Burns to an extent. I don't think this has got to do with that. I don't think he's worried about pressure. I think he's overcorrected his flaw from earlier on, because pre-snap, this play should not go to Saquon Barkley. Pre-snap, if you think you're getting zone, where do you want to go? You want to go to the high-low concept. You want to go to either the mesh, or you want to go to the sit route on top of it, because that's what you do against zone. You high-low the linebackers. There is no way this play should ever have been completed to Barkley in the flat, because the cornerback is right there. And the cornerback is obviously not playing man coverage on a tight end, because that would be a ridiculous alignment for the Giants defense. So I think Hurts basically does too much pre-snap. He doesn't read the play out post-snap. He makes his mind up before the play is run, because he's not blind. And if he sees Saquon Barkley open, I think he throws it. That's the only reason why I defend him. I would say the first one's worse, because I think the first one leads to this one, which is why I would say that that's the play that causes this play to go wrong.
Yeah, and you just got to do the pre-snap work, but then you got to check your homework once the ball's snapped. But then we get to the 4th down. It's the Eagles, because we're going to be aggressive. We're going to go for it on 4th and 2. And for my money, this is one of the most impressive plays that Hurts makes all game, and it's a 3-yard run. And like on a box score, it doesn't pop off. But what happens on this play is just awesome. So if you watch at the snap of the ball, so they're going to motion Saquon Barkley. So we're motioning to 4 strong. What motioning to 4 strong does is it breaks all the coverage rules. This safety is most likely going to have to key across the formation, because otherwise you've got 4 receivers on one side of the field and you've only got 4 defenders there. And so that leaves AJ Brown one-on-one, and AJ Brown's the primary on this play. I think they're trying to run like a fade route to the pylon. I don't really know, because he gets jammed so hard you can't even tell what the route is. And so we can watch, like, he looks at AJ Brown. AJ Brown is just locked up. And so his second read is Grant Calcaterra, who's running like this over route. Now, the problem is that safety that we just talked about is going to flip his hips, and Grant Calcaterra is running directly at him. And so that's not going to be open. And so our third option is Jahan Dotson sort of running this angle route, breaking into the back of the end zone. And so Hurts eliminates Calcaterra. Now he's on to Dotson. There's a small window here, but you're also running right into a hook defender that's going to close this. So this isn't open. Hurts has now gone 1 to 2 to 3. Why does he have so much time? It's because they dropped a guy into coverage. They're only rushing 3. There's 8 in coverage. So Hurts realizes, I have time. He's actually going to go back and check AJ Brown again. We're back to 1. We went 1 to 2 to 3 to 1. And now we're going to take off and scramble for the first down. one of the most impressive plays of the day, I think, for Hurts. And so we'll just watch it again full speed here. We're on 1 to 2 to 3, back to 1. Now we scramble for the first down. By the way, I also just love that this giant safety gets up and celebrates like he just won the Super Bowl for giving up 3 yards on 4th and 2. But I loved that play from Hurts. And again, second time this game, he dramatically bombs mesh rail and comes back on 4th down with a great play. So it's ups and downs, but I think more good than bad with Hurts.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen AJ Brown get beat that badly at the line of scrimmage. Like, he gets wrecked.
It happened on another play in this game. He did. There was like an in route later on, wasn't there? I think on a concept I didn't like. Yeah, and a bit of a weird one. I guess the Giants are very boom bust with their cornerbacks pressing, because it's not like AJ Brown couldn't beat them. He scored a touchdown on them. Yeah. By the way, for those counting at home, that is processing. I think you can argue Jalen Hurts actually does a really good job eliminating what's not there, but because he runs and doesn't throw it, it doesn't turn up in the stat sheet. I just think I struggle with Shane a lot with the Hurts discussions. I think some of them are so basic, like the guy can't read a defense at all, and he's obviously not been great this year. But I think some of it is a bit over the top of the criticism in terms of what he can and can't do. Speaking of which, I only get to my third point, which is I did not like the drop back passing game at all on 3rd down in particular this week. And it annoys me a little bit because I keep getting comments from people saying, oh, well, that's all Hurts can do. That's why they're running it. And I think if Hurts can't run proper concepts on 3rd down, it doesn't give you an excuse to call crap plays. Like, if anything, it gives you an excuse to run more fancy plays, like run a screen pass, run a reverse. Just don't use Grant Calcaterra as a blocker on said screen pass, please.
Yeah, the idea that, he can't read a defense, that means we just run standard isolation routes and he just gets hit in the backfield. Sorry. That, if anything, if you can't read a defense, that means you keep it more basic and you run more trickery. And the Eagles don't do that. There was just a few plays I didn't like. And you guys know, if you listen, I like Kellen Moore. I do think he's got flaws. And I think, unfortunately, the things we're seeing are not unique to his offense previously. I just didn't like some of the concepts. So I'm going to run through a few because we're running late this week. And I really want to talk about the defense as well. So can you hit me with my play 2 on my film, Fred? And I will be quick on this one. So the Eagles are essentially they run motion with Jahan Dotson pre-snap, and then they end up in a 2x2, basically. They end up in way too many 2x2s. I think this is possibly a full field progression. This is one of the plays where AJ Brown does nothing, by the way. Yeah. I don't know if Hurts is meant to go all the way across from Brown to Smith and then to the other side of the field. It's a bit tricky. I think the only thing you could argue he could do here is check it down to Barkley. But as a concept-wise, I'm 2x2 is just, I just prefer 3x1 because you get more conflict defenders. Devontae Smith's route is just a bit of a nothing go route. He's just sort of drifting across the middle. AJ Brown's doing absolutely nothing on a deep in. We talk about don't be reliant on AJ Brown going deep, Shane. Just throw it to him deep. I don't be boring guy. But if it's 3rd and 10 and you don't trust your quarterback to process things, just take a shot to AJ Brown. It literally could not have gone worse in this game on 3rd and long, because every time they were 3rd and long, they got sacked. They might as well have said, you know what? If AJ Brown's 1-on-1, just run deep and we'll chuck it to you. And if we get 1 in 3, it's better than what we did. I think Hurts here does feel pressure from Fred Johnson that isn't actually there. I think Fred Johnson actually recovers, but he does get slammed back into Hurts. But ignoring the pass protection, some of the concepts on 3rd down when I'm watching them, I'm there's not much creativity. They're not really stressing a defense I talk about stressing a defense horizontally and vertically. You could draw a circle around Eagles' 3 receivers on this play. There is no stress. Where's the horizontal stress, Shane, on this play? Where's the route from a running back or a receiver getting out to the side? There's nothing. Where's the deep stretch? There's nothing. There's Devontae Smith a little bit deep, but he's running a nothing route. And then, as there often is with Kellen Moore, my criticism is there's too many guys coming backwards to the football. And I think some of the concepts I see, and I won't go through too many of them, but I will go through one more because I think this is probably my least favorite of the lot. Play 6 on my film, Fred.
I just want to say on this play
go for it.
I saw some people complaining about the sack here. If this is 2nd and 10, this is a horrible Hurts play.
Agreed.
If it is 3rd and 2, it's a horrible Hurts play. If you're across midfield, if you're at the 40-yard line, this is a terrible play because it would take you out of field goal. But 3rd and 10, out of field goal range, he's just trying to make a play. And the lost yardage on the sack, it doesn't matter because the Eagles punt the ball inside the 20 anyways. So
Yeah.
I don't care about the sack. This is one, like, in a different situation, this is a bad sack. He's just trying to keep a play alive, and there's really no risk unless he fumbles it or like takes a big hit that knocks him out of the game. So I just wanted to mention that.
That's really good. And it's also a flaw with just watching videos online. They go, look at this play and it looks terrible. But if that's 1st and 10, it's a nightmare play, like an absolute nightmare. 3rd and 10, as you said, who the hell cares? As long as he's not fumbling and he's not putting the ball in harm's way, I'd rather him do that than throw a risky pass to someone else. But my least favorite, Shane, and I will be quick because even I am looking at time thinking we are running hot on the offense, and that's coming from me. Play 6 on the film thread. And yeah, toilet paper checking in. Toilet paper, man, you got to change your name on YouTube. People who are not watching live are going to think, what the hell are these two on about? I think you've done it on purpose at this point. So toilet paper on YouTube says he hated or didn't like the false target for Dotson. Yeah, that's another example of just like pretty poor. But this is the one. The Eagles finally go 3-by-1. They get AJ Brown isolated. And I'm thinking, right, what could they run here? They're going to run like sail, or they're going to run mesh. They're going to run something where they can like flood the defense one side. They could run they could fast motion Barkley out into a 4-strong look and throw him a screen. They just run like 3 in-breaking routes and an out-breaking route. It's like the most basic concept you've ever seen. When you talk about stressing a defense horizontally and vertically, they're not stressing anyone. Like AJ Brown ends up running a short, which to be honest, AJ Brown's route, I don't even think gets to the first down marker. So I'm not even sure it matters massively if he throws it. He can't really throw it because by the time he actually gets to it, he's under pressure anyway because the Eagles have not left Barkley into block. Like, this is just really basic. And as I said, I get sick of people saying, oh, well, it's because Jalen Hurts can't read a defense. So that's why it's basic. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Because if you don't think he can read it very well, simplify it. Run like a slot fade and tell him just to launch it. Run a go ball and tell him to throw it. Run as I said, a screen pass to take on Barkley. Get Barkley to run something simple. I'd literally just get him to run a fast motion here behind the 3 receivers and check it down. Try it that way. You want to get really creative. Look at some of the things Ben Johnson does with Detroit. Run like a running back pass or something. Throw it behind the line of scrimmage and see if you get lucky and they bust. Like, do something else. And I'm not criticizing Moore too much because I think he had a very good game. But some of the third down shape are just really, really bland. And I think they've got to be more adventurous. Whatever your opinion of Jalen Hurts, you can be more adventurous without asking him to read everything. And yeah, final point, Austin mentioned Jurgen get lit up. Yeah, they're leaving Cam Jurgens one-on-one with Dexter Lawrence. Like, that's just poor game planning. That's not a recipe for success. But there we go. Have you got anything else you want to say on Hurts? Because I think we've done enough, or actually quite a lot on Hurts this week.
Yeah, I was just going to... Dexter Lawrence is 342 pounds. Cam Jurgens is 303. So you're giving up 40 pounds there to the nose tackle. You don't want to be on an island there. Yeah, I mean, I could talk more about Hurts. I won't do it here, but you guys can check out the All-22 video in the Patreon. It's already up. I went through like 15 of his plays. Some of them are the mesh rail and 4th downs, but there's some other stuff in there as well as some more talk about the passing concepts. So yeah,
Shane, for those of you listening on YouTube as well, I know everyone plugs stuff these days. It's boring, but this isn't easy what we do. And the Patreon is $3 a month if you want to get in the Discord. As I was watching film this week, I literally had the Discord open and I was just putting thoughts in there. People were asking me questions. I don't read replies on Twitter when I post plays until later on in the day. So if you literally want to ask me questions as I'm watching the film, normally on a Monday, me and a few others, there's about 3 or 4 of us in the Discord, and they were literally just grilling me with questions, and we were talking about things that we saw as the game was going on. So if you want something a bit more personal and you get Shane's All-22 review, jump in on that. Right, Shane, give me your third point quickly, because I'm reading it just says Kenny Gainwell. So even we can speed up this third point when it says Kenny Gainwell, who may have been not in the most 12 impactful players this week on offense.
Yeah, I just have a public apology to make to Kenny Gainwell because I got mad at him live watching this play and I rewatched it, and I think Cam Jurgens is the one that messes up here. But I won't even show the side view and the terrible passing concept that went with it because I don't think that matters. But this is a 3rd and 7 that Hurts is going to scramble for. And again, this is just how awesome it is to have a quarterback that can do this. But the Giants are lined up across the formation with 6 guys. So there's basically 4 ways that you could pick this up. You can full slide your line right or left. The problem is that puts Kenny Gainwell going all the way out to take on a defensive end. And usually you want him on a linebacker. So the 2 other options are a half slide right which would mean that Cam Jurgens is going to take this defensive tackle, and the right side of the line comes out, and Kenny Gainwell would take the linebacker coming in on the left. That's option one. The other option is a half slide left, which would basically mean Cam Jurgens takes that guy, Tyler Steen takes the defensive tackle, and Kenny Gainwell steps to this linebacker. Those are your two options. Kenny Gainwell targets the linebacker on the right, and also Tyler Steen targets the defensive tackle. So both of these guys think they're sliding right, but Cam Jurgens slides, or both of these guys think the slide is left, but Cam Jurgens slides right. And so you end up with Kenny Gainwell against two linebackers, and he can't block them both. Obviously, Hurts just shrugs him off because he's a beast sometimes, and he scrambles for the first down. But I feel pretty confident after watching this a few times that either Cam Jurgens makes the mistake there, or both Kenny Gainwell and Tyler Steen made a mistake. So it could be either one. Honestly, it doesn't matter because Jalen Hurts pays it off for you anyways. But I felt like I owe Kenny Gainwell an apology there.
There we go. See, we make mistakes. We're not afraid to own up, especially on post-game shows there. Post-game shows for scheme guys like me and Shane are the scariest thing in the world because you say things and then you watch it and you go, oh, no. But that's the joys of the All-22. Right, let's get to the defense, Shane. We're going to be a long time this week. But it's a good game to watch, to be fair. There's a lot of fun stuff this week. Do you want to start, or shall I start on the defense this week?
Let me start us off, and I want to talk about whip, which is a concept that Vic Fangio used a lot, I guess. I think he called it like 5 times in this game, which is a lot for a blitz concept, but it just worked really well. Whip means that you're going to rush your weak side linebacker, which is going to be Nakobe Dean. You're going to drop your strong side edge out into coverage. And so you have 4 guys rushing, but you're trying to get your linebacker through free. And it worked really well in this game. The coverage behind will typically play out like fire zone, which is cover 3 deep, 3 under, but you just got a bonus dropper. But on this one, on this first one, we can just watch Nakobe Dean is going to come flying through. He times the snap really well. He's through untouched, and Daniel Jones has to get the ball out hot on 3rd down, and it's an incomplete pass. And we can watch it play out again. And again, you're going to see we've got coming through. Now, this time the Giants pick it up correctly, but the ball still has to come out really fast because Jalen Carter just wins. So sometimes they're going to pick it up right. You're still only rushing 4 against 5, and so they can pick it up, but it is tricky. The next time they end up with Nakobe Dean coming through free, but he's going to get cut by the running back. And so this is still a win because you force the running back to stay in against a 4-man rush. And it's also a win because Bryce Huff wins off the edge, forces the guy up in Nakobe Dean, who hops up and gets the sack anyways. And then late in the game, Jalen Hunt got his first career sack on the same concept. You've got the linebacker is going to come through. The backside edge, it's Nolan Smith, drops out. And Jalen Hunt is actually going to be the one that gets untouched here. And he's going to come in and he strip sacks. I think it was Drew Lock at this point. So that was a cool concept. It's one that we talked about a lot with Fangio in the offseason. We haven't really seen it a lot. And we saw it a lot in this game, and it worked with a lot of success.
Yeah, we haven't really seen it because we haven't really seen Fangio's defense until after the bye week. I'm so happy watching the defense this week, Shane. Brian Dable, people talk very highly of him. Fangio killed him. Fangio wrecked some of his pass protection. I'm sure you've seen this stat, but the Eagles didn't blitz once. They didn't send more than 4 men one time the whole game, yet they got unblocked pressures consistently. That is ridiculous. That is the most obvious example of coaches or the Eagles coaches winning against the Giants offensive coaching staff. Whip was awesome. They ran a few other different kinds of simulated pressure as well. They ran one where both the edges dropped. I've got so much to say about the defense because it was actually Fangio. Like you guys know, I've studied Fangio a lot, and I'm watching this defense the past few weeks, seeing a bunch of cover 3 and going, what the hell is going on? Like, I know he runs it, but this isn't his defense.
I think
this was his defense.
I think he watched the clip from last week where we told Fangio he should run Fangio coverages against bunches, and he was like, hey, maybe we'll try that.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh wait, I'm Vic Fangio. I have that playbook that everyone's found online, that everyone tweets, like Sean Syed. Can I just let me find Sean Syed's Twitter? Oh, this plays cool. I can drop both the edges. I'll do this." Right, I've got a lot to say about Fangio's defense, but I'm going to talk about my man crush from this week, Shane. You've already hit him a little bit, but I thought Nakobe Dean was fantastic. I want to go like too overboard and be like, he's the bet and he's this and that and new contract and he's here. But last week I said in my article, I don't think Nakobe Dean is good enough to be a quality starting linebacker in this league. I think he's more replacement level. And I feel a bit sad saying it because Dean gets a lot of rubbish online. People think he's useless, and I think that's nonsense. And I also think that Nakobe Dean has struggled at times this year, but not as badly as people have said in past coverage. I thought he was fantastic. Like, genuinely, I thought he was awesome. You've already showed some of the blitzing, so I won't show too much of the blitzing because everyone knows Nakobe Dean in college was an unreal blitzer, and he looked like Nakobe Dean in college this week. But it wasn't just that. It was his pass coverage. Like, there are so many clips of his pass coverage where he was exceptionally good at taking away the middle of the field. I'll show you my favorite one, which is... I believe, as I'm very, very quickly checking through my thread. Yeah, it is clip 6 on my film thread. The reason why this is my favorite one is because we've seen Nakobe Dean struggle with this. He often sits there and receivers run behind him. But look at how he plays this. He does enough depth to stop the check down, and then he gets back perfectly. And he's reading this without even looking at the guy behind him. Like, this is perfect. What we said all year, teams have killed us with deep crossing routes. Look how basically he reads that so well. I could go on. I thought run defense, he was fantastic. I thought pass coverage, he was fantastic. I thought rushing the quarterback, he was fantastic. I think there's one play as well that really stood out, and I'm not going to talk about run fits this week. I don't think it's any of my points, but I will just say the fact that they could... I talk a lot more about run fits in my BGN article, which will be up very shortly. The fact that the Eagles could stop the run from a 4-man front was really impressive and a very positive development. And my favorite example of this, Shane, is clip 7 on my film thread, where basically Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis get doubled, but they both do a good job anchoring and they both keep Nakobe Dean free. And their spacing is so much better here. So you see that both Carter and Davis get doubled, but both Carter and Davis don't lose. And what this does is it means that if you look at a Giants lineman, he can barely get to Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean doesn't come racing downhill. He plays this really well. He waits. He checks the running back isn't cutting this back because the running back could cut this back. And then he explodes and hits him really well. And I just thought he was really good. Like, I'm a bit of a Nakobe Dean fan because I sort of feel sorry for him because he gets so much grief online. But I thought he was extremely good this week. Like, as good as a linebacker performance, except for some of the ones we've seen from Zach Bourne this year. And I think I wanted to give a whole point on Nakobe Dean because he basically did everything well. There wasn't anything I saw this week that made me think that he's a worry going forward.
Yeah, there was a definite emphasis on taking away crossing routes in this game. You talked about Nakobe Dean. There were also several times that like safeties were cross poaching like crossing routes, even though like your typical like quarters drops wouldn't have you doing that. It was like if number 2 didn't go vertical for the safety, instead of dropping into a deep half, he would just immediately look to poach a crossing route. So that was definitely a point of emphasis, I think.
Indeed, it really, really was. Do you want to do your player spotlight there, or do you want me to stick with Fangio and talk about something else?
I'll do the player spotlight. So this is a first for On the Shane page, but we let you guys do a player spotlight poll each week for our Patreon members. And this week, the player spotlight is Malik Nabers. And so we're going to look at how the Eagles cover. Malik Nabers has been on fire this season. The Eagles held him to his lowest catches and lowest yards of the year. Per Next Gen Stats, the first 6 weeks of the season, he had 2.9 yards of separations on targets. Against the Eagles, he had 1.4. So they cut that in half. So what did the Eagles do against Malik Nabers? And so I've got a few clips here, and we'll just kind of talk through what happens. But on this first play, here we go. So Nabers motions outside. And so I think this is like a quarters look, and we're going to get Darius Slay essentially ends up one-on-one on the dig route here because you're going to have the slot going deep. He's got to be carried by Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Slay defends that dig. Nakobe Dean is also going to sort of sink, and he'll start to close that throwing window. He's not quite there. But the other thing I think is interesting, and I talked about how much they're poaching across the formation here, because if you watch the off safety, Reed Blankenship, he immediately is opening up looking for a crosser. And this should not be his guy. This is not a number 3 receiver vertically, but he's going to push Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. See the hand? He's pushing him. I've got him. You get back over the top. And so Slay has help over the top from Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, even though he shouldn't. It lets him drive down and he breaks this up. I thought that was really cool design. On the next play, you're going to get crash at the bottom of the screen, sort of. And so you get Malik Nabers running the in. You get the corner route here. And Zach Bond is going to press the tight end and then just steps down into this throwing window. We don't care about the corner because we know Daniel Jones wants to throw to Malik Nabers, and technically a safety is there. And there's just no window. Daniel Jones ends up taking a sack. On this next one, Malik Nabers is on an island against Quinyon Mitchell at the bottom of the screen, and he's going to run a curl route. He gets a little bit of separation against Quinyon at the top of this. Quinyon has to respect the deep ball, but Daniel Jones is already flushed out of the pocket. On the next one, the Eagles is actually one of the reps where the Eagles run crash, and that's going to end up meaning that Reed Blankenship ends up in the slot on Nabers and does a really good job of covering. He's right there. He rallies for the tackle at the first down marker. So, I mean, it gives up the first down, but that's a really good open field play by Reed Blankenship. And then on the final one, we're going to get into some real Fangio stuff. The Eagles are going to run quarter, half. And so we've got the quarter side away from Malik Nabers. We've got the half side on Malik Nabers' side. And so that's essentially going to play out like Nabers just being bracketed on this vertical route. Darius Slay is going to sink underneath him. You've got safety over the top. And so you've essentially got him bracketed, and the ball's going to go the other direction. And so I thought they did some cool things against Malik Nabers. I thought the corners and the safeties all got involved in it. They all played really well. And one of my favorite stats was they had no missed tackles, the defensive backs combined, which is just a testament to your statement about how that's related to separation, not just not knowing how to tackle.
Yeah, either it's related to scheme and separation, or the Eagles defensive backs have magically learned how to tackle over the space of a few weeks. Right, I'm going to combine 2 points, actually, Shane. We're not actually going that long now. We sped through the defense a little bit, but my last 2 points make a lot of sense to combine. So I'm going to talk about route distribution, which I say a lot in my Bleeding Green article. If I had to ask you, Shane, route distribution, this is a pop quiz. Who doesn't like this? What would be the other word you would use to describe like a good Fangio secondary that it has to do? I would say distribution and what?
Communication.
Nailed it. And I've already published my Bleeding Green article. We are in sync today, lads. Yeah, it is distribution and communication. Yeah, Austin, I find it so hard now. And I actually now just go back on route and route all the time. And it's killing me on the inside every time I talk about it. Because certain things I've heard people say route so often that I want to just say it. But I'm English and I refuse to suddenly sound different. So I'm going to keep saying route. So route distribution, very British there. And communication. And this is why I have defended Fangio a little bit this year. I mean, defended is a strong word, actually. I've killed him on after podcast. But I have always said that I think that the defense should get better as they learn basically how to work together. I've said for ages that Jonathan Gannon's defense was my favorite defense to watch for the Eagles in a while. And people kill me for that because I loved watching them play quarter coverage. They were brilliant. They were so good at it. And because the amount of snaps I saw where like Maddox, Bradbury, Slay, the good old days were so good at distributing routes. This week, they were so good at it. It was like a throwback. It was a proper Fangio style defense. So I thought I'd show you a few examples of communication. And my third point was looking at the Eagles cornerbacks. You've already looked at them briefly, which is why I thought I'd combine. But I think people think that Fangio's defense means it's easy for the cornerbacks. And I very, very much disagree. I think they're left on an island a lot more than people think. Let's start with play 4, Shane, of my film thread. This is a really nice example because the two Eagles outside cornerbacks are in basically one-on-one coverage. A lot of people think when you hear you've got a safety deep, so this is quarters, so you've got two safeties deep. And a lot of people think that when you have safeties deep, that means you have safety help over the top. But if you look at this play and you pause at the perfect moment, the Eagles cornerbacks are completely one-on-one. like totally one-on-one. And their safety's job is to essentially take away these middle of the field throws. The check down is open, and we know with Fangio's defense, we know that you can take check downs on them, and the Giants didn't. And I think better offenses will take 4 or 5 yard check downs and live to fight another day. So things aren't fixed, but the communication's really good. They run this perfectly. They take away that middle of the field crossing route exceptionally well. One safety's keying on it. The linebacker, once again, Nakobe Dean does a good enough job. Even if they do take the check down here, they have 3 players staring right at this. This was quarters, which you've already actually stolen a little bit of mine because you've done quarter half, which I was going to mention as well. But there was a few other plays that were really, really good in terms of distribution. And to me, this is what Fangio's defense is all about. It is about communication, and it is about distributing routes. It's not about individuals coverage. Sometimes some guys online have more time than me to watch things, and shout out to Honest NFL, who spends a lot of time breaking down film. My gut feeling when I watched this game was by a mile, this was a split safety game. Like, it wasn't close. I thought it was the most obvious example of split safety coverages I've seen. Honest NFL crunched the numbers. 10 times they ran cover 8. 10 times they ran cover 6, 8 times they ran quarters. Only 5 times they ran cover 3. Like, that is what I expected to see at the start of this year. Because to some extent, Shane, I don't really care whether it's 8, 6, or 4. They're all split safety coverages. The difference is minor in many ways. And often it's to do with the formation that the opposition's in anyway, rather than the call you give. So essentially 28 times they're running cover 4, cover 6, cover 8, compared to 5 times they're running cover 3. Twice they're running cover 9, which is basically the same thing. 1 fire zone style defense. This was not a single high defense, Shane, this week. This is not that horrible single high defense when crossing routes just run over the middle of the field and the Eagles have no idea what they're doing and they're shouting at each other post snap because they're not sure who's covering who. This was a really, really good Fangio performance. And I deliberately didn't break down the pass rush this week because I think everyone probably expected us to talk about the pass rush a lot. And this might be controversial, but I think the secondary play was more important with the pass rush this week. I think it was the secondary that gave the pass rush time to get home. I didn't watch these plays sometimes, except for the unblocked pressures, and go, wow, Daniel Jones has not got a chance to get the ball out here. And 8 sacks, they killed them. The backup tackle, Josh Sweat, was just running past him. I don't think that's fair. Even on Josh Sweat's sack, Austin saying Fangio said the same. It's always nice when you agree with Fangio because Fangio is very, very honest in his press conferences, probably to a flaw at times. Josh Sweat's sack he had to go for a tight end chip. Yes, he beat the backup tackle, but he's had to fight through the tight end and then fight through the left tackle. That was because the coverage behind him was exceptionally good. And I think it's just really, really good to see an actual Fangio-style defense. I think the problems will remain. I think that they will give up checkdowns. And in this game, I think we saw that checkdowns were open. I think we've already shown one clip there. It'd be interesting to see if they play this way and Burrow continually checks it down after. And I think there's a fault in that to Fangio playing these split safety coverages. But that is what it's meant to be. That is the defense. And these single high stuff I've seen this year. Week 1, we saw cover 3 like spot drop. We didn't even see like matching. We just saw like players going back to their zones and then not taking a receiver running an over route at all. And the Packers ran it repeatedly. It was bizarre. So this was a proper Fangio performance. I think the last thing I will say, and I haven't even got to Cuba Dean this week because we've got too much to talk about, but Dean, Slay, and Quinion, I think were awesome. I think all 3 of them were really good. Dean has shocked me how good he's been so soon actually in the slot. I think the big test now is, will they keep the same style against a team that are better? And I think we're going to find out very quickly because it's all very well playing a lot of this style of defense when you've got one Giants receiver to cover in Malik Nabers. Will they do it when Jamar Chase is there? Will they do it when T. Higgins is there? Will Darius Slay be standing 3 to 4 yards deep and closing in on short routes when there is actually a legitimate fear of him getting beat over the top? So I think this week is going to be fascinating. I think it's such a good matchup because it's perfect to figure out if this is how the Eagles play. Because we'll go back to Jonathan Gannon. What did Jonathan Gannon do? What has Fangio defense has been criticized in the past for doing? For basically beating up on bad quarterbacks. And when they face the good guys, it doesn't work anymore. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, these are the good guys. That might be the best trio in the league, arguably, of quarterback and 2 wide receivers. So I don't think the Eagles are going to keep them to 3 points again. No one's expecting that. but I want to see a similar style. I want to see an aggressive style. I want to see a lot of match zone. I want to see a lot of split safety. I don't want to see them suddenly going back to this single high stuff to keep a safety over the top. It's, to me, I really, really enjoyed this film because it was Fangio. And I will be able to tell live this week because I'll get the live All-22 being in the stadium. And when the Bengals have the ball, I will be watching the Eagles coverage extremely closely and seeing if they're only going to do this against bad teams, because that has been a criticism of Fangio and it has been a criticism of this style of defense in the past.
Yeah, the coverage and the pass rush have to be married together, because there was a play in this game where the coverage busted and Malik Nabers would have been open for a walk-in touchdown, and the pass rush gets home. The pass rush being better makes the coverage look better. The coverage being better makes the pass rush look better, and it's a positive feedback loop. I mean, everybody remembers in 2022, the Eagles had 70 sacks. The Eagles had 3 defensive backs on the All-Pro team that season. And it all goes together. Like, the coverage was good because the pass rush was good. The pass rush was good because the coverage was good. It's hard to have one in isolation. And so seeing that start to work together, it's good against the Giants, like you mentioned. Let's see it against the Bengals.
Yep, I agree. Right, Shane, finish us off. Talk about an underrated player this week. And I even said in my article, I think he gets underrated because he says some strange things to the media. But I think he was awesome this week. And we've done pass coverage. This is probably a point I never thought I would ever see anyone type. But the second I saw you type it, I punched the air because I couldn't agree with you more. What's your final point, Shane?
Yeah, let's talk about one of the Eagles' best run defenders on Sunday, Darius Slay, who did a fantastic job in run defense. And you're kind of limited by what you can talk about when Jonny's like, hey, I'm going to talk about Nakobe Dean and the pass defense and all of the cornerbacks. And it's like, well, thank you. I don't know where to go, but Darius Slay in run defense was just really good. I've got 2 clips here I'll show. He is at the bottom of the screen on the first one. And Bryce Huff does a good job of coming in, and he hits this puller to condense this gap and spill it outside into Darius Slay. And generally, it's not a good thing if a run gets spilled into Darius Slay, but he comes down, sticks his nose in the fan, and makes the tackle. Then on the second play, this is the back view. He's going to be coming from off screen on the right. And again, it's just a really good job by Slay. He's going to get around this kick out block, and he dives in, and he doesn't ultimately make the tackle, but he makes contact. He's got a small window to try to wrap around, and he slows the running back down. And these aren't the only 2 plays, but I'll cut it there and just say that, like, Darius Slay gets a lot of criticism, and I've always thought that he is overly criticized by Eagles fans. I think he is a very good player still. But this game was his best game of the season. He was really good in coverage. He was coming downhill. He was playing like he had a chip on his shoulder, and it definitely popped off the film.
Yeah, that first play, I think you already shown it, so we won't do it now, where he covered Malik Nabers on the in. Like, he runs the route for him, man. Malik Nabers is a good route runner, and Slay is all over him. There was another clip that I tweeted where I said that Slay and Quinyon Mitchell basically ran the routes better than the receivers did, and I really wasn't joking. We didn't get a chance to go too much in depth in Dean and Quinyon Mitchell this week, but it wasn't just Slay. It was all 3 of them that were really, really good. I think Blankenship was good as well, to be fair. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I didn't notice as much, but I think the safeties had a bit of an easier game. I think you can only play who you play against, Shane. You can't deal with it. You're playing against the Giants. The Giants are not completely inept. Their quarterback isn't very good, and their offensive line isn't great. But Malik Nabers is a superstar, and he's had some superstar performances this year. And the Eagles looked like a proper defense this week. And whatever you think, 2 weeks in a row, they haven't given up a touchdown. So that is a dramatic difference from what we saw post-bye. But I'm always process over results, because I think you have to be when you break down film. And I enjoy the process. I think this is what I expected Fangio's team to look like. This is what Fangio's good defense have looked like in the past. So whatever happens this week, I just hope they stick to the same process. Do you know what? If Jamar Chase goes and catches a ridiculously good deep ball over the top of you, and T. Higgins catches a fade in the end zone because they're that good, I can accept that. What I can't accept is a guy running a crossing route and the Eagles not communicating and giving up 33 yards because they're playing a single high safety and no one knows what they're doing. Like, there's a way you can lose, and there's a way you can lose without me being criticizing to you. And I think the process was really, really good this week. So yeah, we actually didn't talk about the pass rush much, but I think that's because, in my opinion, this game was more about coverage. Should we end with a great comment?
Yeah, Brett Eclipse on YouTube asks, would you trust Quinyon Mitchell or 2015 Nelson Aguilar to catch a football to save the game? The answer is no, but I'm assuming he means which one would you pick if you had to? And as bad as Nelson Aguilar was in 2015, he did at least catch a football, and I've yet to see Quinyon Mitchell do it. So give me Nelson Aguilar.
Also, in this situation, is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson going to jump ahead and intercept it first, or knock the ball away if the ball is thrown to Quinyon? In fact, there's more chance of Chauncey getting there this year if it's thrown to the Eagles defensive player than it is the other team's player. But maybe that's harsh.
I jokingly said on the one that he dropped in this game that he heard Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's footsteps because he's closing from center field. But which would have been
brilliant if Chauncey had knocked it away again.
You do that's his job as a center field safety. I honestly don't fault either guy for the collision last week. Neither of you expects the throw to be that bad. So I said it jokingly, and a lot of people were hating on CJGJ for it. And I've certainly been critical of him, but I don't think that was his fault either. But yeah, I don't trust Quinyon Mitchell. Will maybe one day catch one, but today is not that day.
No, he's going to get one soon. He's going to get a flip this up when he does it. He's going to break on a comeback route, and it's going to be a pick six, and it's going to happen in the next month. I fear that he's been close too many times this year. He will get one of these over the next month. I feel pretty good about it.
Burying that take 75 minutes into a podcast when nobody's listening anymore. I love it. That's how you do podcasting. That's how you do
it.
Right there.
That's how you do it.
All right. Well, that's going to about do it for this episode. Jonny, do you have anything else you need to throw out there? Any rapid fire takes, closing thoughts?
Nope. I'm flying over to watch Ohio State, Nebraska on Saturday. I'll be at Cincy, Philadelphia on the Sunday. So if you happen to be at the game, please come and say hello. And I look like I do on the video now, so you'll know it's me. And I will be also at Pittsburgh, New York on Monday night. So I have got lots of NFL in the flesh the next week. So I'm incredibly excited. It might mean my schedule is a little bit out of sync next week because I don't get back to the UK till Thursday. So it might be Shane Solo next week. I might try and pop in some thoughts from the game. Either you can read them out or I'll send you a recording. We'll figure out a way of doing something. It may depend on how hungover I am and how much my brain is functioning after a weekend of watching college football and the Eagles and then driving down to Pittsburgh and watching that as well. So yeah, we shall see. We shall see. But yeah, thank you for the comments. It's been a good one this week, actually. I enjoyed this week. Loads of good comments, which makes our job a lot easier as well and also a bit more interesting than just watching film by ourselves. So if I don't speak to you guys next week, I will speak to you in a couple of weeks after that.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up here for this episode of On the Shane Page. If you're still watching, please go follow us on social media. I'm at Shane Half NFL. He is at Jonny Page. The Eagles Pin Pull Network is at Eagles Pin Pull. Eagles Pin Pull Network, wherever you stream your podcasts, and on YouTube. So thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back next week for a show in some form. Jonny, I'm a little jealous. You're going to go to more NFL games next weekend than I've gone to in my life. I've only been to the one, but
wow. I mean, I've been to more already because I've been to a few in London. I have been to Philly as well. But yeah, it's a bit of a road trip. You don't get to turn 30 very often. So I've wanted to do a sports road trip for a while. So I'm also going to watch an ice hockey game as well, which I've done once before. But 4 days back-to-back sports, 3 college, 2 NFL, and 1 ice hockey. So living the dream next week.
Yeah, I lied. I have been to 2 NFL games. I went to a Rams 49ers game in St. Louis back in 2013, but that was not a good game. So, and I wasn't really a fan of either team. It was just close. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up. We will catch you guys next week. Thanks for joining the show.